Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Connect podcast. Today we have Steve Ford from Goodwork HR. Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming on.
Hello, Brooke. How are you?
Good. So, can you tell us a bit about you, your story, and how you started Goodwork HR?
Sure. So, Goodwork HR technically turns 9 this year, but up until last year, we were known as Ford HR. So, I founded the business back in 2016, just as a sole operator, and at the time had zero intention of ever hiring staff. So, having worked in HR for many years prior to that, and basically knowing how much frustration a lot of business owners had with their staff and hearing about that every single day, I didn't really have any intention of bringing a team on board. So originally, the business was started just as myself, operating as sort of an outsourced HR manager for small, medium enterprises. But over time, sort of by accident, the business grew. And at some point in time, I probably had the epiphany that I could go and find people that were very values aligned, to join the business and potentially take on some of the work that I didn't enjoy. So find people that had specialities and passions that probably complemented mine, and filled some of the missing puzzle pieces. So it was 3 years before I took on my first employee, who coincidentally became a business partner last year. And progressively since then, just by organic growth and literally close to 100% referral based growth, we've just taken on more team members, progressively over those last sort of 6 years. So there are 7 of us now, with a really nice broad skill set across all the various elements of HR, whether or not it's compliance, whether it's leadership, whether it's performance frameworks, culture, reward recognition. There's 100 different elements of HR, and we're sort of now at the point where we've got a really nice brains trust, of good eggs who have specialties that cover all of those bases, which is great. So our work, essentially, we do a lot of specific project work. We do a lot of ad hoc support for people when something's on fire. But a vast majority of our work is actually acting as an outsourced HR department. So we've been very fortunate to maintain a lot of ongoing, continued business relationships with clients where we've seen them through growth phases from, potentially as low as 5 to 10 staff up to, you know, triple digits, and maintained our place as their HR department, with various members of our team acting as business partners to different leaders and key personnel within those businesses. So that's a majority of our activity is that sort of ongoing strategic and operational support for growing SMEs.
Yep. No, that's awesome. So, you touched about you guys rebranded recently. So, what made you decide to go about that?
Well, as I said, the business was originally known as Ford HR, and that was literally me picking a name out of a hat when I started, thinking that it was always just going to be me. And being able to go through this journey of progressively adding more and more really great people who legitimately are smarter than I am, I didn't want the brand of the business to be attached specifically to me, and I wanted it to be more of a we and not a me.
Hmm.
We've got an awesome team, and basically everything we do now is a sort of team approach. So there is this really nice feel for our clients in terms of having a group rallying around them and supporting them. So we wanted to convey that a little bit and have that concept of it being this group of support. And also we just wanted a little bit more of a brand that was aligned to our personality. So we worked with a branding agency by the name of Stoop last year, and I probably drove them crazy, sort of working through this process, and I was literally losing my mind reading through a thesaurus for months on end, just looking at every word in the English language. But we sort of landed on this concept and this brand of good work in the context of this nice optimistic approach in which we feel like work, when it's done right and when it's built the right way within businesses is a really positive impact on not just the business but those people. Like being engaged in your work is the best thing in the world in my mind. So that's probably what sits behind the brand is this really nice, optimistic, problem solver, industrious approach to work where we're always there to make things better and to try and create a really great experience for employees within businesses, but also for the founders and the business owners, just so that they can feel confident that they're moving towards their own goals and not becoming slaves to their own businesses, which is unfortunately a really common phenomenon.
Yep, 100%. So, I'm sure one thing that you deal with a lot is company cultures and disconnects between, adding new employees and whatnot. Can you touch on that? What are some of the challenges that businesses face, and why would they come to you necessarily?
So the answer to that is sort of the length of a piece of string, but ultimately the main reason that we end up diagnosing is that a business with either poor culture or importantly sort of just a lack of culture, they haven't put in the heavy lifting early on to define what the culture of their business should be. So you
Mhm.
might have 10 different businesses with really different cultures, and there may not necessarily be a better or worse culture between them, but it's really important that founders and business leaders are really thinking about what they want the culture of their business to be and how that aligns with their own big picture goals, their vision, the mission of the business, turning those into values. And then once you've got really good clarity around what the identity of your business is and what that culture should look and feel like every day, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to go and find the people that fit that culture. So, what we see a lot of is just this misalignment where people are potentially really good people and really skilled and with great capability, but they're probably just in the wrong environment. And it might be a really great business with great intent, but they've got people who aren't really aligned to what they're trying to achieve. So it always goes right back to the start. I almost think of like a set of plans being drawn by an architect of what do we want this to look like when it grows up?
Yep.
And then how do we really put that out as a value proposition to potential employees or the team that we've already got and make sure that our team are really aligned in our values and how they want to work and what their own goals are. Are they really ambitious and growth focused themselves? Is that a good alignment for my business if I want to have a really steady growth where I'm not trying to set the world on fire. I'm just having, trying to set, a really nice, consistent environment. It's always just alignment issues. And if you don't define what people need to align to, you're more than likely going to end up on the wrong track. And we see that every week.
I'm sure. So, how did you get into HR? Did you study it? Um, yeah.
I did, and so I studied HR at university, and I always say I graduated high school and essentially made the strategic decision to go to university, so I didn't have to get a job for another 3 years, and had no idea what I wanted to do. I landed on a business degree because I thought that kept the most pathways open to me, and then by sort of natural inclination veered towards the HR space because I did have a bit of an underlying interest in group dynamics and team psychology and all those sorts of things. I never necessarily wanted to be a psychologist. I didn't want to go down that avenue, but I kind of enjoyed those aspects of group dynamics and sort of organizational cohesion and all those sorts of things. But honestly, I started that degree with no clear understanding as to whether or not I'd even want to finish it. And it caught my interest. And so that's where I started. And then coming out of university, I ended up working through a couple of roles that weren't HR. They were just operational roles in sales and marketing and a couple of other things because it
Yeah.
is actually quite difficult to land a good HR job if you haven't had HR experience. But on the flip side of that, I always say to people now, if you want to be a great HR person, do a couple of years at the coalface, understanding what it's like delivering services, being in operations, um, living through the frustrations and the roadblocks that the people that you're going to service down the line are experiencing.
Yeah.
It is so incredibly important. I have seen some examples of people that have gone, that they may have gotten amazing marks at university, which I didn't because I wasn't working that hard. And because of that, they will go and get a nice, a shiny graduate HR role,
Mm.
and they end up deprived of seeing the real world within the organization and not necessarily understanding what they're there to help or to solve.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense because you do hear, like, especially even in education, when a professor doesn't even have real world experience, but they're teaching their students, a lot of students will come back if they're not doing well and be like, well, I've already worked in this, and this is based on experience. So I've had that a couple times actually in uni.
We get an initial skepticism all the time when we go in and people go, you can't understand what this is like. But across our team, we've got such awesome experience on various front lines, and very quickly we do need to go back and refer to that and almost convey that credibility. Now that I've been doing this long enough, for example, like we've worked with so many different finance and accounting firms, and having gone through that journey in that industry as well as a lot of other industries, we can very quickly spout off the types of challenges that come up in those industries. And that's how you get the credibility. But again, just starting from scratch in HR without any coalface experience is a real, I think it can hamstring people.
100%. So a quick question bouncing off that. What did it take to build your team? So what values did you look at? What experience? So what is your team made up of?
So I have always really, really heavily focused our own internal recruitment on our values. I cannot remember right now what degrees or what specific experience any of my team have because I see that on a resume in the first instance and go, cool, tick, that requirement is satisfied. But what I know is the secret sauce is knowing what my values have always been, what's important to me in my business and how I work, and needing to find other people who have those same values. So, what that ends up looking like is a group of really different personalities, but in terms of what's important to them, there's a real consistency and cohesion there. So, for example, and you do get a lot of this in HR, we all have people pleaser tendencies, and that's not a weakness. It's something we have to manage and moderate just so that we're not over promising and absolutely burning ourselves out. But
Yeah,
the fact that we are so naturally inclined to want to meet people's expectations and really get to the bottom of what they require and get to the end of a project or a deliverable and have them really happy with us. It's kind of, again, to use that phrase, the secret sauce of why we've had a lot of good fortune with client success and so much referral activity because we do really give a damn about what the feeling is of the person that we're working with. So I know that that needs to be something that's embedded into our values. And then once that's embedded into our values, um, all our recruitment activity is so centered on that. So essentially, we do try and nudge towards, at different times we'll fill certain gaps around capability. And we've got one team member who is our absolute weapon with compliance and the legal side of HR, which is really important. Um, so we'll be targeting those sorts of things. But again, that's in that initial checklist of have you got some relevant experience, but then I really care more about are you a good person? And do you literally, if I look through our 5 values, do you tick those boxes?
yep.
Can you tell me what sort of behaviors you'd be exhibiting on a daily basis that demonstrate those values so that I'm not going to have to push you to do them? They're sort of second nature to you. So that's how we've landed on a really good team with minimal movement or change, and it's just sort of been this nice growth of our people with really great different personality types and really great different specialties from a technical standpoint as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, are there any hesitations when going into like companies? Because I know that there probably would be some pushback from someone who's not open to change. How do you navigate that?
A lot of people have reluctance around change, but the reason that we've been asked to come and visit their office is usually because they either want to jump on an opportunity or they want to solve a real pain point that's keeping them up at night. So, because, and I guess this is probably the benefit in dealing with like an outsourced consultancy in HR or any other field is that we have seen the same problems and the same opportunities come up time after time after time. And we can very quickly just provide real world social proof of what we've done in the past that solves those problems, what the outcome was. And the truth is, because almost all of our work, or virtually all of our work, is referred, a lot of the time that business owner has been referred to us by a peer in their industry that had the same heartaches or is on the same journey. So, again, there is often a bit of a fear of change, but um, it doesn't usually take us long to probably spell out the value proposition of undertaking the change, because we can really clearly articulate what the return on investment is, but also what the change process is and how we manage that. Because you basically want to just keep things nice and tempered so that your team members don't freak out through that change process as well, because human beings are inclined to do just that.
Yeah, 100%. That makes complete sense. So, if you could give advice to business owners, what around company culture and performance, what would you tell them?
So, a really important starting point is to make sure that your ownership or leadership group is aligned, and really make sure that in terms of the vision, the mission, and the values of the business, that we've landed on something that has full alignment, and we're all going to buy in, and we're going to push that down. If you don't have that as a starting point, you're essentially going to be running around like headless chicken in different directions, because inconsistent messaging will start to seep out of your leadership group. A lot of people consider vision statements and mission statements and values to be fuzzy trollop, and sometimes it is, but if you do it right, it's real, and it's something that you then push down to your teams, and you also use to recruit people who are your people that will be aligned to what you're trying to achieve. After that, it is honestly around role clarity, goal clarity, really working hard to spell out what your structure is, who does what, using tools like racy matrices, and just removing ambiguity. I always say step one is to remove the frustration before you go down the line of getting beanbags and going crazy with the work perks hashtag that people think are the magnets. That stuff doesn't mean a thing if you're not removing frustration. So alignment, clarity, removing frustrations, which is often around ambiguity in roles, undercooked processes, all those sorts of things. And then you start to get really proactive with stuff like the benefits and the rewards, and using some initiatives to really understand your people at a personal level, their own career goals, and how you can find alignment between where they want to go and where you want the business to go, so that you're both growing together and you're not accidentally veering into other directions. And probably the one thing I would flag that just comes up in almost every scenario is probably stopping to think about the return on investment for leadership development, because this is a great business with everything in place that doesn't have a good set of leadership skills. Even if there are leaders with great intent, they will get stuck in mud at some point. So we do so much of this. We virtually every week I'm in a room with one executive or leadership group, and some of it is the fuzzy leadership stuff, and it's understanding the role and the responsibility of leaders and how you serve your teams in your business. And sometimes it's really tangible skill sets, and it's things like delivering feedback, knowing the ratio of positive versus negative feedback that you should be putting out to your team at all times. And when I say negative, I should say constructive. Things like delegation. It's There's all these very specific, tangible skill sets that people think of as soft skills, and the label soft skills makes people think that they're secondary skills. If you get that stuff right, you're actually going to give yourself a pretty massive competitive advantage against other businesses in your industry, in particular in industries like finance or technology or other really technical skills where some of that stuff gets overlooked.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I really like how you shared that because it is. a hard topic to know when you're ready to hire a HR manager, especially when you're a small business and looking to grow. You need someone to give you a second opinion as well, because your life is the business. So all you want to do is succeed.
Essentially that has always been our business model. So we are working with businesses that have usually they have designs on growth, and they're probably not big enough to justify having one standalone full-time HR person. Because if you have one HR person, you're either going to overpay someone who's also going to have to do some HR admin, or you're going to be paying for a HR administrator that can't impact you at a strategic level and can't really coach your leaders. So our business model is essentially being able to provide you bit pieces of every level, between the administration piece to almost a HR director piece. Like I sit in on, and a few of our teams sit in on ELT meetings and sometimes board meetings and offer the guidance at that level. So this is where we essentially are able to offer the shared expertise and the little bits of each level that otherwise you can't access from one unicorn human being.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Now, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Multiple ways. If you, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you look me up, Stephen Ford at Goodwork HR on LinkedIn, or literally my email address, I'm happy for people to reach out to me directly, is steve at goodworkhr.com.au.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it, Brooke. Thank you.